Hello class, I'm going to analyze Love is a Fallacy to model for and prepare you for your literary analysis and just instruct you with how to go about how to do a literary analysis. Reading literature, you want to think about what you've read, you want to involve yourself, you want to seek understanding of the story, and you don't have to do this with just works of literature. So I have a short piece of fiction that I'm going to have you read today and tomorrow, but as we've done previously with the episode of Bob's Burgers, you don't have to do this with only literature. You can view any story through an analytical lens because we're eventually practicing for how to view life's problems, the situations we face at the job or in our relationships with this same concern and regard for analysis. So again, we think of the title, Love is a Fallacy. Well, we've covered fallacies. You're probably sick of fallacies, but you also are now recognizing them all around you more and more. And, well, you're probably familiar with love. I don't know your relationship status or history, nor do I really want to know. But, again, we have an ironic title here because what does fallacy have to do with love? You know, there's a number of songs that say love is ... You know, love is like a river or an ocean, love hurts, anything like that. So you can speculate, what do you know about love, what do you know about fallacies, and then will this make the story have a happy ending or sad? You can consider who wrote the story that you're analyzing and what type of stuff do they write. You can also think what other expectations you might have if you're going to enjoy the type of story you're reading or not. But love stories are laid out a certain way. This is where I tell you there's probably only a few types of love stories. Tell me if you can think of something besides one I'm going to go into right now. But there's a love triangle, two people after the same person, and there's star-crossed lovers, two people who can't be together for whatever reason. Do we get a different type of story told in all of literature? So I want to give a little background on Max Shulman, a writer who was alive between 1919 and 1988, so that's a good run. Nice long life. An American writer. His early stuff focused around what it was like to be in school, college and high school. Eventually he transitioned into writing for television and was generally a humorist, writing comedies and shows like that. And after he got out of television game, was producing stories that were very approachable and understandable based on this common shared experience in the American culture. He was doing TV early on in the life of TV, so obviously now our habits have changed. You know, there's not very much drama or comedy in long form and serialized format like you would watch a sitcom on television now on YouTube. There is of course Netflix, but you know, we do binge those shows, so things have changed a bit. But a lot of the early versions of sitcoms that are still present today in modern comedy were established, so he's quite an influential figure you may or may not be aware of. So one thing you can also do for pre-reading is think of allusions. Now, allusions are references to other works of literature or other stories. You can use this as a compare and contrast situation to think, well, this is a similar story where they embodied or expressed the ideas, and that helps me understand this new story in a certain way. So I said there were two types of love stories. Well, we technically have a third present in this type of story, and that goes back to Greek mythology with Pygmalion and Galatea. Pygmalion was a sculptor, one of the best sculptors ever, but since he devoted his life towards his craft, he was alone, and so he sculpted a statue of a beautiful woman, prayed to God of love, Aphrodite or whomever, to bring it to life, and so she did, and they were together forever and happy. And if you're having misgivings about this kind of setup, you should, because there's problems with it, problems that are expressed in modern iterations of these type of stories, of which I listed here. Usually all these type of stories have someone from a position of power or strength or masculinity or wealth, and in that world they're dissatisfied with those around them. The men are creeps who are after trophy wives. The women are possibly the only gold diggers, and so they're suspicious that people will just not love them for who they are but want their money and status. And so they go to the lower classes to try and find a suitable person for them. But swerve, it turns out that they were the ones who were rotten on the inside, and they had to learn what it really means to be in love, to be a good person from the person they hope to raise. So I've just a few. My Fair Lady and Pretty Woman work this fairly traditionally. Trading Places does it in its own little twist. It's not necessarily a love story, but it is about two people who come from wealth and the street respectively and get their lives turned around, and it's one of my favorite movies, and certainly one of the best Christmas movies out there. More recently, we have something called She's All That, where the most popular kids in school break up, and so the popular boy decides he's gonna date someone below his station, make her the most popular girl in school to win a bet or something. And she finds out, is none too pleased, but he realizes he actually loves her. Kingsmen, similarly, the Kingsmen are a group of spies born out of the gentleman class who protect England's interest through their espionage. And so when the son of a dead Kingsman tries to join up, he's not seen as worthy and has to prove himself. But again, if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to spoil it, but there's the same twists and turns as any of these other stories as well. So you can play with the type of story we have to different effects. So the approach I'm taking to this analysis is just to examine the characters and use that to show how they line up with what's going on in the story. So we have the narrator early on saying his motivations and giving his characteristics. He claims to be a giant intellect. He's bragging about how smart he is. And he very much is. He's good at teaching fallacies, a difficult subject which you all are aware of, to Polly. And he also has designs on being a lawyer with influence and wealth and power, and I don't think this is without purpose, or he'll fail at this task, but he's got a lot to learn. He tells us that he early on does not want true love. He wants a beautiful wife to be on the arm of a successful lawyer. He's visualizing his future, and it's very telling. He wants to get Polly and make her good enough to be with him, but he's the one who's not near as smart as he thinks and kind of rotten on the inside, what with trading his raccoon coat for his best friend's girlfriend. So what I want to discuss with Polly is the crux of an essay I would write on this. We have to think, is she really dumb? What proof do we have that she's actually dumb? Her name, Polly, evokes an image of a parrot, Polly want a cracker. Parroting is not proof of knowledge or wisdom or intelligence. Maybe memorization, but that's not useful. You have to question. If someone knows something, are they just repeating what they heard, or do they truly grasp it, understand it, and can present it in the core of their being? We only have descriptions of Polly as dumb from the narrator, who proves himself to be quite unreliable. And her lack of knowledge of fallacies was what frightens him, which she helps her with. But how quickly does she learn what fallacies are? They get several dates, several lessons, and she picks them up quickly. Ignorance is not wrong or bad unless it's chosen or persistent a state of being. she takes to these lessons and learns something that's very difficult. Let me look at this quote. "It's not fair," she said with indignant. "It's not a bit fair. What chance has the second man if the first man calls him a liar before he even begins talking?" So here we have both a fallacy, poisoning the well, I believe, but also a good commentary over what's going on with is she really dumb? So we have some themes, or not really real themes. Love is not present in the story so much. It's about relationships. It's about interactions between a man and woman. But the claims of love by the narrator ring very hollow. And even the reason why Polly claims to go back with Petey seem dissatisfying. He says that when asked why she chooses Petey over the narrator over Petey, Petey over the narrator, she says it's because he's got a raccoon coat. And I don't know that I buy that. If she's as clever as she shows herself to be, able to learn quickly, figure out situation and stuff, well, is she still, shallow and wants to be with someone who has wealth and can afford the latest fashion trends? Well, that's her call. That's her right, even if I don't agree with that kind of lifestyle. But I think of those other types of Pygmalion and Galatia stories where the person finds out what their would-be paramour was planning for them, that they're being trained or made to be good enough, and they don't like that one bit. Several of those stories have that revelation where they find out the scheme or the bet or the corruption of their supposed better, and the other person actually finds out that he has to make good, and that he's really the one who's being improved with his interaction with who he thought to be was inferior to him. We of course have gender stereotypes handled. It's thought then the only role of women would be as the wife to a husband, and I don't know that Polly seeks that, but certainly that's the role that others would choose for her. We have again the favorite appearance versus reality, where you think who's really dumb, who's really smart, what's really going on, and why is there a lot of silly things that don't quite make any sense. We have the idea of knowledge versus wisdom and understanding, and book smarts versus street smarts, or people smarts, however you want to call it, emotional intelligence. I do want to end not quite on a theme, but a literary device that's present in this story, and that's that of symbolism. We'll be talking about The Secret Lion tomorrow or next time or whenever it is you're going to look at that lecture. And interpretation of lion as a symbolic image is clear, but what does a raccoon have to do anything? We have a description of it in the story. Look at it rationally. Raccoon coats are unsanitary. They shed. They smell bad. They weigh too much. They're unsightly. Again, raccoons are cute little bandits with their little hands, and they're very resourceful, clever. They can, I don't know if any of y'all go camping, but they're very good at figuring out locks and latches and anything. You're supposed to, tie up your food and leave it out of the way, or else they would be able to find it. So what's going on here with a raccoon coat? Why is it worth trading a girlfriend for? Why does a girlfriend want it so bad for her boyfriend to have? Well, think of what it is. It's a piece of clothing. It's a piece of fashion. Fashion trends come and go. They're cyclical. How were you dressed 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? How were people dressed in the 80s, 90s, the 70s? Are they dressing like that again or similar to that? Think of how fashion and trends work. Think of the easiest piece of clothing that's symbolic of stuff, a crown. A crown is made of gold, another symbolic valuable metal, jewels, which all itself serves pretty poorly as a hat. It's heavy, it's probably uncomfortable, it's not going to protect your head from the sun, but it represents esteem and power. It's ostentatious, it's bright, it's meant to stand out. And so, maybe not for men, because of course it's a double standard, but think of what fashion does and how it chooses, you know, appearance over function. You know, if you want to look good, but you make yourself uncomfortable doing so. So it goes with a raccoon coat. If it's a fur coat, attitudes currently have turned against that. But if it's an animal, you would think something that looks luxurious and nice, and then someone decides, well, in the scenario here, where does he get the coat from? His father had one because at one time they were popular and useful, and they went away and came back again. Trends are in everything: movies, literature, language, politics, and so they're quite silly. They're quite ridiculous because it makes us think, did we really do better, or is someone going to look back on how we were now in 20, 30 years and laugh at us just like we're laughing at the bozos and the bell-bottoms and with mohawks and whatnot. You can certainly look back and read over the fallacies presented in the story, but I'm not going to go over them now. I just wanted to list them because they are important, they do matter, and it is a good way to study and prepare for that test if you look ahead and read over the story or lessons or try and jump ahead. But I will probably direct you to look over this before any testing as well. Read the story so that you can prepare for that. We of course had the hasty generalization, the ad hominem, the bandwagon, the post hoc, the false authority, the false analogy, false dichotomy, and begging the question. I might also say not all of these were in the lessons that the narrator presented to Polly. Some of them express themselves in the story itself. Funny how that happens sometimes. I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a better understanding of the story. Again, the idea behind literature is that there's some kind of understanding they're trying to share with you, and sometimes that understanding is, hey, things are silly and messed up and weird, and why are they that way? Well, just because they are.